So this is talking about determining the hypotenuse. What you need to know about a hypotenuse is you only ever have a hypotenuse when you're dealing with a right triangle. So everything we deal with here is going to be based on a right triangle situation. And the hypotenuse is always going to be directly across from the 90-degree angle, which is always going to be your longest leg. So just like the Pythagorean triple that we talked about last time, it goes right in line with what we're doing now. So we're still going to be dealing with a squared plus b squared equals c squared, which is Pythagorean. Okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it says a right triangle has legs with lengths 12 feet and 13 feet. When it talks about legs, each of these are a leg. Like the vertical and the horizontal are always going to be referred to as legs. So in order to calculate our hypotenuse, we're simply going to plug that in. So it's going to be 12 squared plus 13 squared equals c squared. Okay. So again, you're going to need a calculator, something that has squares and square roots on it. So if you're on your iPhone, you can go down to the bottom and either rotate it so that it gives you a scientific calculator, or there's a new feature where you have to hit the button and you can change it to scientific. But let's look at it. So we have 12 squared. Remember, that means 12 times 12 is 144. And then we have 13 squared, which is 13 times 13, which is 169, is going to equal c squared. Okay. But unlike what we had in the last section, we don't know what c squared is, and that's what we're going to have to solve for. So what we can do here is we know we're going to add these two numbers together, right? So let's go ahead and add that. So 169 and 144 gets me 313 equals c squared. And it's at this point we're like, okay, well, how do we get c by itself, right? Well, what this means is c times c, correct? So the opposite of a square is a square root. So you're going to look on your calculator and you're going to look for this button here. It has a 2 in the front, okay? You've already got the 313 in your calculator. You can usually just hit this button and it will find the square root for you. And that gets me 17.69180,601 equals C. Okay, we don't want to do all that. And if you look right here, it says to the nearest 10th. So let's talk about where the 10th place is. Hopefully we know our place values. Our 10th place is going to be one spot behind the decimal. Hundredths would be 2 spots, right? So let's talk rounding. We look the spot behind where we're going to round to. It's 5 or bigger, right? The 9 is 5 or bigger. So it makes the 6 become 1 more. So it's going to be 17.7. Okay. Now, again, if you were ever to have to build anything and try to find this, especially if we're talking about stair steps or corner shelves or any of those sort of things, this is what you would end up having to use. Oh, it says label is required, right? So in this case, it would be feet. Okay, so in this one, the label is required, so it won't count you wrong. It'll just give you that little alert. Okay, so same thing here. It tells us the right triangle, so we know it's going to be 2 legs and a hypotenuse, which means we know we're dealing with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's look at it one more time. We have 25 inches as a leg and 12 inches as a leg. And we need to find the hypotenuse. It says find the length of the hypotenuse, provide the answer to the nearest 10th. So again, we already did 12 times 12, which is 144. I'm going to put 25 times 25 in my calculator, or 25 squared gets me 625. And we know that, we're going to add those together. So that gets us 769 equals c squared. Okay. Again, c squared means what number times itself, which is technically a square root, right? So we're going to find this button here, and we have 769, hit that button, and that gets us an answer of 27.73. And I'm going to not like write the whole thing out, right? Because now we know we're going to round. So this is my 10th place. The number behind that is not 5 or bigger, so my answer is simply going to be 27.7. But remember, it requires that label. So we're gonna look up here, it says inches. And there we go. Okay, so when you're finding hypotenuses, the longest part of a triangle, this is how you go about it. Okay, so let's see. Again, my hypotenuse is going to be my longest side across from my 90-degree angle. So this one's going to be 9 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. Well, 9 times 9 is 81, and 8 times 8 is 64. And we're just going to add those two together. Gets me 145. And then again, we're looking for this radical button, the square root button. So we hit that, and that gets us 12.04. And we're rounding to the nearest tenth. That number behind it is not 5 or bigger, so our answer is just going to be 12. And it's going to be millimeters. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Just make sure that you understand we're going to do this for any time we're dealing with right triangles. Okay. So again, a right triangle has a length of 6 inches squared and 19 inches squared. Find the length of the hypotenuse, which is always C. So that's 36 plus, I don't know this one off the top of my head, 361. And we're going to add 361 plus 36 is 397. We're going to hit that radical button because that's the opposite of a square, is a square root. And it gets me 19.92. I'm going to look the number behind the tenths place. It's not 5 or bigger. So my answer is going to be 19.9. And don't forget the label, which is inches. Okay, so if you need any help, let me know. Other than that, 10 points, get more math.